month. We're zooming this again. Like to welcome my my sidekick Beth Short of Gallagher Property Management. Really knowledgeable, knows her stuff. But let's start with Leon and any FFREIA kind of stuff, and then we'll get into new folks announcing themselves.
Okay, thanks, Carl. I guess one of the main things is that, well, first of all, we had a meeting, virtual meeting with Equity Trust. It was actually a workshop, a meeting and then a workshop. So um, hopefully everyone knew about it. Didn't have as many participants as we would like, but that's always the case, right? And so a lot of very interesting information. Being someone who got exposed initially to self-directed IRAs back in 2003, I was really surprised at all the stuff I didn't know. So another way of saying, I think it was a great event. The workshop itself started on Tuesday at 6 and went all the way to 9:45. And every minute of it was worthwhile. So I'm sort of looking through the names, and a fair number of the people were not on the call, but just an opportunity to put another quiver in your little basket to shoot some more arrows and have a different way of acquiring property and building your assets. So so next time maybe you get an opportunity to hear that event. So we being the board basically said that was the first of our series associated with the summit. You know, we used to have the summit, which was an all-day event in October, and that all-day event in October is of course not going to take place and happen. And so we're having a number of virtual sessions that's coming up. Before we get to the virtual sessions, I'm still working on a lot of folks that we'll have probably next year, but we're going to have an individual that's going to come in and be a speaker in November. Prior to November, however, we have Chris Sardone. He takes his normal October slot, if you will, and he's going to address any questions that people have associated with just in general, taxes, anything you want, any question you want to ask the CPA. So one of the things that I would suggest is that people send him a quick email or send it to Susan or myself, and we'll make sure he gets it. It's sort of hard to imagine in these days and time with COVID-19 that people don't have a fair number of questions that they would be asking him from a tax perspective. So that's the October meeting, and seeing that the 1st of October is the first Thursday, that means the 8th of October, if I remember correctly, is the session itself with Chris. So looking forward to that. When we get into the next session, it's going to be into the November session. Let me just be technically correct here. We're going to have a speaker that's going to come in and do again a meeting where basically on the 14th, if I remember correctly, they're going to talk about some of the training that they will provide, and then they're going to get into a workshop that goes all day on that following Saturday, virtual in nature, talking about how to find motivated sellers, how to actually structure your real estate business so that you can be successful at doing things. And I don't want to go into any of the details because I'll mess it up, and we're going to have it on the website so you'll be able to see it between now and November, and we'll talk about it, of course, between now and then. And then in December, there's a big toss-up associated with whether we have a holiday party or not. clearly, if we do, it's going to be the same. It won't be the same as it's been in the past, of course. I mean, you got to do the social distancing and all that type thing. I don't think that we would have a DJ and we wouldn't have a whole bunch of dancing and stuff. So that's up in the air, and there's a question about that and what is it that that we're going to do around that. And you can provide input to me or Susan, and we'll take it into consideration as we look at what are some of the possibilities. So I think that's it from the standpoint of the things that we wanted to just touch base around and let people make people aware of. So thanks. I see Dee Thompson is on the call. In the last session, I made sure that people were aware of the fact that at the picnic, there were a whole bunch of people who did a whole bunch of great things to make us be successful. And one of those people was Dee. Karl did a great job, so did Beth. You know, so we were able to persevere, for sake of better words, because we had a great group of folks. So that covers, yes. Okay. That covers the pieces that I need to touch upon. I think, Susan, Joe, is there something that I forgot that you think I should have covered? Andy?
Have you guys thought about when you're going to come out of Zoom meetings and do in person, or are we just kind of playing it by ear? I mean, I know we did one the last week, but just kind of seeing how it goes.
No, I don't think it's that as much as it is that there is this level of consternation that takes place as soon as you start to say, well, we're going to go back to all in-person meetings and we're not going to do virtual meetings, because you have people who say we should only do virtual meetings. And then you have a whole bunch of people who say we should only do in-person meetings. So it's one of those things that is a hot topic from the standpoint of, well, I guess it's like a lot of things in life. No matter which way you do and which answer you come out with, a lot of people would say, well, that means that you're going to be wrong. But my answer is that means that you're going to be right. Because half the people are going to say yes, and the other half is going to say no, and it all counts on how you actually look at it. So a long way of saying that we're really trying to work our way through that. We've listened to a couple of sessions where we said, okay, let's be able to do both, where someone could have an in-person meeting, but you could also have people virtual at the same time. And that just, the ones that we've seen have just absolutely been 100% terrible. Okay, I mean, you couldn't even hear what the speaker was saying, let alone hearing what some of the virtual people and the questions they may have. So it's a work in progress. We're lucky we have Andy McQuaid, who's helping us sort of work our way through those things and try to figure out what is the best approach to take. Great question, but unfortunately we don't have the answer right now.
Okay, let's move on. So I think I see a couple new names on this particular group. If you don't know, Leon is the president of our FFREIA club. That's him right there. And so
let me just interject, Karl.
Yeah.
Leon is president of Freedom First Real Estate Investment Association, and we are a not-for-profit organization located in Rochester, New York.
Like I said, a club. So we had a...
Yes, I just wanted to clarify.
So I think we have a couple new folks. What we do is introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your real estate endeavor and how you connected to FFREIA. And I think, Brad, have you been here before?
No, I am. Can you hear me? Okay, yeah. I'm new, and this is my first meeting, so very happy to join. I'll give a bit of background and of where I've come from. So I just recently relocated to Sherrill, New York. I was living in the UK, in Jersey, in the UK. Jersey is a small island off the coast of France, and it's actually the original Jersey from New Jersey that that's in the US. And I've been investing in US real estate market internationally. And so I've just relocated here and joined the REIA because I'd like to, now that I'm actually on the ground, be involved with understanding the market, understanding what's happening, and to learn as much as possible. I am not unfamiliar with upstate New York because I did go to U of R for undergrad as well as to the Simon School of Business. So I am familiar with upstate New York. Happy to meet you guys and let you know that I'm interested in single family hold investor for single family rental as well as mobile homes as well.
Cool. So are you here in the States for good?
I'm here for good.
And do you have properties now in this area?
I do. I have property in Buffalo. I don't have anything in Rochester, but I have property in Buffalo, Georgia, Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana. But really want to grow my portfolio more in upstate New York.
Cool. Right.
Well, you're in the right place. For this particular group, if you sort of looked at it and said, well, what is the delineator from a whole bunch of other clubs, if you want to call it that, or real estate investment associations, it is our ability to network. Networking is our greatest asset. You can send us an email, or I can give you my contact information. And we have 5, sometimes 6 meetings a month, structured that way so that people are able to go to a meeting in the morning or go to a meeting in the evening. And each one, and so it's twice a month we have a meeting that's associated with landlording, which is the one that you're at right now. Landlording or housing providers, you know, will when Karl stopped using Clubhouse, I'll stop using landlords.
Managers.
And then the other meetings are all associated with a group that we call the alternative group, and that group is basically looking at anything that you can do real estate investing wise that has nothing to do with actual being a housing provider or a landlord. So if you're going to look at buying notes, if you're going to look at flipping houses, if you're going to look at just any other subject or activity, then that would be the meetings to attend.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
And we have the website up and running too, right, for you?
Yes, sir. Of course.
All right, and we have Dino. You been here before?
Hold on. Yes. No, it's just our first meeting. We're having a little bit of trouble starting our video on our Zoom here. So I don't know what's going on. I guess our privacy. Anyway, you can listen to us. We're actually Canadian, and we've purchased a few years ago a 5-unit apartment building. And we have family in Syracuse, New York. So we're thinking of looking at some opportunities down in that area. So we're just wanting to know what the market is like and go from there. So.
Awesome. And Josh, are you new?
I've joined a couple meetings in the past. I know
this particular one.
What's that?
This particular one, the property management one.
Yeah, no, this is the first. I join when I can. I went to undergrad at U of R and pretty new to this, so just purchased my first property a few months ago, and yeah, so just looking forward to like learning more about real estate. It's not like it's not like my main profession, so yeah, looking to learn from you guys. So far, it's been really great.
It's an ongoing process. We learn something new every day, and especially now when things are changing by the day. What I want to start with, which by the way, the content of this particular support group is driven by you guys. So, you know, eventually we're going to share best practices. You have an issue to talk about. You have something you've learned new to share, maybe a new technique and strategy to, where'd I go? Am I there? What happened? Damn. New technique or strategy that you want to share, given, you know, the times that we're in, because we are changing a lot of what we do and how we do things because of the new rules, the laws, the statutes, the orders that we just got clobbered with within the past year and a half. So, but I want to start out with each month now. We're covering the multiple overlapping laws, orders concerning eviction moratoriums, and there are a few out there, federal, state, and local. But I want to clear up confusion from last month and talk about the Holloman bill, which is the 8192A, 8192B. They've both been passed, just so you know, Andy and Frank. It began as 8192. They just broke it in two parts, and I'll explain why in a minute. These were passed in June 30th of 2020. So this is a pretty significant dagger. Fortunately, right now, the courts are not really utilizing this one, not really looking at this one because they don't need to, because they have other ones more closer to home. Judge Marx's bill, this CDC bill, or order rather. But this one here is significant. And what it says, I'm going to try to keep it simple, that you can take a tenant to court for non-payment of rent anytime after March 7 up until, ready for this, 6 months after the emergency is lifted by Cuomo. Now, I don't know this. Andy, maybe you know this. But that ended September 7th. Is it extended? I think it is. The emergency declaration is still active. Does anybody know that? Nobody knows?
I don't think it is, because if you're getting telemarketer calls again, that's the green light that the state of emergency is over. They're not allowed to dial your phone with robocallers during that period. That's why it was so silent for that month.
So has anybody gotten calls now?
Every day.
Well, if that's an indicator, then yeah, September 7th was the last day of the declaration. And then count 6 months after that, wham, you're in the middle of 2021. You can take them to court for non-payment of rent, but a possessory judgment cannot be issued. That's a warrant. That's a, Pat, I'm in the middle of something. That's possession. You cannot get possession of that property until that time frame. That's a long ways down the road. Now, that's the 8192A. It just defines the timeline and what you can and cannot do in court. This is only for non-payment of rent, by the way, that it's speaking of. The 8192B essentially defines what the court shall or can, and I'll read it here for a second. Hold on a second. Consider as a hardship. In other words, they have to declare that they've been financially impacted and not be able to pay their rent. They have to kind of prove that to the court. And the court can, among other relevant factors, consider the tenant's income prior to COVID, the tenant's lawful income during COVID, and their liquid assets, and their ability to seek out governmental, SSD, SSI, SNAP, unemployment, their ability to be able to get those funds. So he puts that all into the pool to determine if he qualifies for that claim of financial duress as a defense. That's what that is. I want to also go on to one other item in 8192 B, because this affects not just non-payment of rent. Here's what it is. The same category. If after March 7, the tenant has been impacted with COVID, not being able to pay the partial or some or all of the rent, you cannot give them a 14-day pay or quit. Back that up. You cannot give them a notice to quit notice. Now that was a tactic that I was going to use within the first year. They're not paying the rent. I was going to give them the notice, hey, you got to vacate. That law prohibits me from doing that. It goes on to say that if in fact you do that, that act is considered as a retaliatory eviction, and there's a lot of consequences to that if you go down that road. So don't do it. So essentially, you cannot give a notice to quit to a tenant well in the middle of 2021 if they are affected or not be able to pay their rent due to COVID. Now, the course is, how can you prove that if you're not in court, right? So I don't know what to tell you. Any questions with that? And by the way, I don't have the facts to all this. So if I said something wrong or incorrect, or if you have something to add to it, please jump in. Beth, especially you. So that law is in effect. That's a state law. Let's go to our local law, because these are ones that they're kind of using right now. And then we'll get to the CDC order. So our local order was from Judge Marks, the administrative judge of New York State, who her order still stands that any cases after March 7th filed are suspended to further notice. Now, I have a feeling that she's going to extend that to the end of the year. Did that happen, Beth?
Not officially yet, but apparently word is Cuomo's gonna say nothing else either. That's what I've heard.
Right. So be prepared that there'll be an extension on that. And again, suspended. You could file the cases, and that's what's happening now. Well, actually, they're being filed, but there's no court dates being given out. But the judges right now, my observation in court, I've been there a few times, is that their hands are tied. They cannot and do not issue judgments for a warrant. Judgments for rent, they're under negotiations. They're just extended out. They're adjourned, and I haven't. But possession, we're not going to see possession for a while, guys. And that's going to lead us to doing some different things. We'll get to that in a second. Outside of court, lawfully. So that's the Judge Marks one, and that goes for all. My understanding, all evictions, not payment, holdovers, lease violations. So it's all evictions on that. Cuomo, the state guy, eviction moratorium on, was it warrants, Beth, where it was extended to October 1st?
Right. It was for everything, but that'll be extended too.
Yeah. So rumor has it, in fact, he said it on record. I heard him the other day that he is going to extend that to December 31st. Marks, Cuomo, why? Because that's when the CDC order ends. That's the federal arm to this whole thing. Let's talk about that. So everybody, I think, is pushing everybody to the end of the year of no warrants, no possession. Who knows about monetary judgments, and who knows? It changes every day. So the CDC order, and right now the tenant attorneys, and if you don't know, we're operating on a new program down there called SCIP, Special COVID Intervention Program. I have no idea if that's what it means. I just made it up. It just sounds good, but they call it SCIP. This is where judges are mandated now, by the way. Every tenant must have legal representation. So, period. And I haven't seen any that they won't let a tenant go by themselves. So they're all out in the hallway. Legal aid's there. Law in New York is there. They're out in the hallway. They got the conference tables out there. They're just trying to work this stuff through. And for the most part, the goal appears to be, we're all in the same boat. The goal is to get these folks through to the money and apply to the money that's available for rent relief. The state Rochester has a administrating a program through the Catholic Family Center. So that's what they're doing with these cases, is that they're adjourning, they're to move these tenants through financial possibilities. Even with DHS, DHS has a table set up there. They're right out of court, they're going right over to DSS because they're there. So it's looking good at this point, but it's a moving target every day. So things are changing often. So the CDC order is the same concept, is that the tenant must prove and show to the court through a declaration form that they have to fill out and hand to the landlord. Now, I heard that a lot of times that the tenant attorneys are just actually handing those to the landlord or manager's attorney right there in court. So, and there's a number of different things on that. Let me pull that out. Yeah, essentially, they have to test to like 4 basic items that they have used their best efforts to obtain all available government assistance for rent or housing. They don't earn more than $99,000 per year, per calendar year, $198 if you're joint. And they're unable to pay full rent or make full housing payments due to a substantial loss of income because of less hours and the effects of the COVID-19 when it comes to work. And they have to attest that they made every effort to make timely partial payments throughout the time. Now, these are 4 points that need to be adjudicated, right? They need to be dealt with, and that's the problem. That what I'm hearing is the attorneys are not sure if they have the opportunity to be able to cross-examine that proof, because right now it just says they just got to deliver this to the landlord. Well, our attorneys are trying to gain some footing in the process so they can actually cross-examine and try to have the tenant prove that. This is so early in its stages right now. This conversation will be completely different, I think, in a month from now. Any comments or questions so far?
Well, I don't know if I have any questions. I was actually on a call with 4 staffers from the White House when this first went live back on the 9th, and because I'm on the board for the local home builders, and I'm part of the multifamily and the affordable housing group. It's kind of how I ended up there. There's a lot of caveats to that that the staffers kind of went through. Like if they sign that declaration and it can be proven that it's not true, it's pretty much perjury. Which is not a great thing for the person. So it is a legally binding document, and it's not something that they can just sign and willy-nilly get away with lying on. They mentioned a couple of other things, like if they sign the affidavit and there's a new rental assistance program that comes out and they refuse to go and apply for it, they immediately become ineligible to be covered by the declaration.
Correct.
And then there was a few other just little details that basically said that the federal government has made lots of money available to the states to get rental assistance down to landlords and tenants, and that they don't think that it's their problem anymore to do anything extra to make that happen. They're like, the money's there, your states have it, lobby your state. That was pretty much their exact terminology. It was a completely off the record conversation. It was about 40 minutes long. And the end all be all is it's only because of COVID not being able to pay the rent if they violate the terms of the lease, if they kill somebody, if the lease is up for renewal, you are not required to renew them. None of that stuff applies. Like if they are dealing drugs, having parties, getting a lot of noise violations, the protection under that CDC eviction moratorium is gone because it stops being a payment thing and becomes a lease violation thing. So
Thanks for the input, Andy. Yes, so locally, if you want to know the number, $3 million just sitting in the bank account specifically for rent relief. It's there. And on that note about the declaration, that declaration, Andy, actually starts out with, I certify under penalty of perjury pursuant to 28 USC, blah, blah, blah. So it says it right out the gate. Has anybody, I think Beth should be familiar with the CFC process, are able to comment on, add some information on that? And then, have you seen any approvals from during that process?
We still haven't seen any money from the CFC, which is mind-boggling to me because we had tenants apply the first day it was open. They had to apply and then they had to wait to kind of get an appointment with somebody to talk to them, gather all their information and all of that. And then they were told it would be 2 weeks for a decision, but we're going on tenants 4 weeks after their appointment and they still don't know anything. So, Karl, have you seen any money from CFC?
No, you're a little bit more advanced than I am through that process. What I've done is I've educated all my tenants. I have about 38 tenants in this pool that they need to go down and get relief, because if not, they're in the eviction loop coming up. I got about 40 out of 160 units in that category right now. So our mission right now is to get these people in line. Sometimes you got to stroke them a little bit, help them out a little bit. So I don't have a feedback as to who, when, where, why, or how in that process, Beth. So it is slow moving, but it's there, and that's just one of several. You know, there's
gotta be probably 10 agencies that'll help people. But I mean, honestly, if you ask me, I just think there's a lot of hoops to jump through, and tenants are like, whatever, they can't kick me out till the end of the year, so I'm not going to jump through them. I have had quite a few tenants who were denied because they were getting the extra $600 a week, so they weren't using it on rent, so they were denied because they had the money. And then the other thing that I don't think a lot of people know about, as I have mentioned before in the meetings, is a lot of the agencies, or even Catholic Family, I believe, they need to make sure that the person can afford rent moving forward. So if they only make $1,000 a month and your rent is $900, they're not going to pay your back rent to keep you in that place because you can't afford it. Because you don't have the income to sustain that place. So that, I think, is also something that's getting in the way of people getting help.
Right. Yep. The PCHO, Tempro, Rain, CCSI, Catholic Charities, Community Place, Baden Street, Charles Settlement House, 211. Just call just remember the 211 number. It's an emergency hotline for tenants to call to help them. Well, they direct them to the proper agency for financial relief. Many other than CFC, many of the agencies want them to go to DSS first, get a letter of denial, and then the agencies will help them. That's not a requirement of CFC. Or is it? That's not a requirement, Beth, right?
It is.
It is a requirement?
Yep.
They want to see a denial letter?
Yep. And I think that's why it takes people so long. And because if you go to DSS and fill out the paperwork, it's like 20 some odd pages and you have to have all this documents. I don't think, unfortunately, you and I would do it, but I don't think some of our clientele even have the knowledge to gather that information. So they just give up.
I find it to be true. You know, it's when it's bogged down by noise, they just forget it. So I don't know.
I will, Karl, let me chime in real quick. Just a little tidbit for everyone. The easiest one to get is RAIN, RAIHN. If you have a child under 18, they automatically give you $900 towards back rent. It's like what is it, 1 page or something like that?
Wait, hold on. So it went over to Rain now? Because
Rain.
it was YMCA.
No, Rain's doing it too.
Because YMCA stopped, and I think Rain picked it up.
Yeah, and then Rain just re-upped. They got a ton more money, I believe, late last week.
Good to know. Good to know. And that's a great program because it's really simple. It's a 1-page thing. You've got quite a bit, Beth, on that.
Oh, yeah.
The $900. They just show up.
I'm sorry?
They just show up. The checks just show up
Oh.
in the mail.
Like, I don't even know my tenants are applying for it, and I get a check for it, and it's super fast too. So, you know, if that's the first one, that if you need to push a tenant and you're really on them, like, hey, you owe money, it's literally 1 page. And I believe sometimes we've even filled it out and had them sign it, and it's really easy.
Do you have a copy of that 1-page application in your office?
In my office, yeah, I can send it.
Get that to me? Yeah. Okay, good. That's good. I thought it was gone. So thanks a lot. It's something I
Nope.
learned. Awesome. Which lead any other comments, questions, or concerns about these eviction moratoriums that you want to?
Carl, Josh, I'd like to ask Josh something. So Josh, you had success, you got money from the state. Do you know how that process went?
No, I wasn't directly involved in it, but the tenant was behind by like a month or so and received like a one-time subsidy payment of like $2,000.
Do you know how long it took from start to finish, or they just kind of did it on their own?
They did it on their own, and then
That's good.
yeah, they notified us. So
Great.
yeah, sorry, I don't have more details on that, but that was the agency that emailed me.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
I got to tell you, Beth, I don't know if you can agree with me, but you're the first one I've heard that had a successful story with that program.
I can ask my tenant like what they did and how much trouble it was worth, if that's helpful.
On the topic of rent not being paid, I think a lot of us, if not all of us, we have a tenant, 2, 3, or many that they're in both two different boats here. One is they're riding the windfall, if you will. They're taking advantage of the situation. They're a little bit more of the egregious tenants, a little bit more of the conniving ones. And then you have the ones that want to pay, they just can't. And they want to do the right thing, but they're limited, right? So we got both these. But I think everybody here has 1, 2, or many in both groups. Anybody share any of your stories or any of your experiences with how you're dealing with that and how it's affecting your management of the property?
I mean, the only thing I've really noticed is when the 600 got cut to 3, I have a tenant that's now getting slower paying. The 600, she was fine.
Got to get them out. And that leads us to, this court stuff is just so mind-boggling and counterproductive. It strings our financial hands, if you will. We got to think of different ways outside the court lawfully to get possession. Remember, possession is king now. Money is not. Possession is what we got to try to get. So Gallagher's and I think some others have tried a technique, lease termination notice, lawfully worded, offering cash for keys, significant cash, by the way. And frankly, tenants respond to cash in hand. Not only cash in hand, but we're going to forgive all the past rent. I mean, this is ludicrous. This is crazy. Why would you do? Again, it's about possession. Because remember, we're not getting warrants until well into 2021. Okay, so you cut your losses now. You cut your $5,000 losses now. You got your 9-10 grand loss later on. Your choice. It's up to you. And then thinking of winter coming up, you might be forced to do it or want to do it just to have that place occupied. I know some of us are thinking that way. So cash for keys, I had 35 letters that went out. 2 responded, took the deal, which, by the way, and a third one said, listen, I owe you a bunch of money. I just feel bad taking the money. I don't want it. I'll just move. All 3 left the place in mint condition. And because of the state of, tenant supply and demand issue out there right now, these places are being filled up within days. Before it took me weeks. So they're getting ready quick. And so that's a good thing. I had non-payment of rent. Is Sue still there? She's off, right? Non-payment of rent. I was up $5,000. October 1, I got, full rent coming in. That's what we're talking about. Yeah, I had to take Sue. Your 212 Fernwood is one of them. Yeah. I managed Susan. So the same thing. That's rented out for $950. October 1. They just moved out 2 weeks ago. Left it in mint condition.
How do we sell?
That's offline on it. Offline. We'll get Colleen on that one. So, any other comments or issues with the state of economy and rent payments being, an issue right now? I mean, your thoughts on payment, cash for keys? Anybody try that yet?
Hey, Carl, when you say a significant amount of cash, how much are you talking about? If you don't mind saying.
I will, no big deal. I do 1,000. Others do 2,000. I've heard 2,500. You're looking at 2 months of rent, add the 2 up kind of thing.
Okay.
So at this point, I'm not going higher. Beth, would you like to comment on this a little bit?
Yeah, you kind of got to feel your tenant out, because if they owe you 4 or 5 months rent and they're legitimately telling you, I don't have the money, they might just go based on, I'm not going to come after you for a judgment. However, I think people are smarter than that. So we have had some people leave and we've probably done maybe 4 or 5. We've had people leave for $700, $1,500. You got to remember that people typically in that situation, they're only thinking about today and this week. They're not really thinking about, I'm saving $1,000 a month by not paying rent. That's an extra $1,000 in my pocket. Why would you take $700 to leave? They don't think that way. So they're thinking about, yes, I get $1,500 to leave. Well, they don't think about they have to pay rent somewhere else then, but then it becomes someone else's problem. So, I mean, I agree with Carl, start with 1,000, but I have heard people come back and say, no, I'll counter you with 4,500. So, you kind of got to feel the tenant out. If they're not going to take it, you got to, be a little gentle.
Right. Okay.
And again, we emphasize lawfully. It's serious business now because they actually statutized that. That's a word back in June of the Tenant Protection Act, where unlawful evictions is now a crime, Class A misdemeanor, I think, or a felony D. And the AG will prosecute turning power off, water off, taking door. That's a no-no now. Don't even go there. Okay. Any other comments or?
You said power off, water off is a no-no. What if the tenants are responsible for paying the utilities and they're not paying them?
Great question. Now, from a street manager point of view, that's their problem. But you talk to an attorney, they may look at that as being a constructive eviction that meets the criminal act. So talk to your attorney about that. But Beth, I know you have a response to this because I think you ran across this before.
Yeah, you just got to be careful. You know, you're responsible for making sure the furnace and the hot water tank are in working condition. If they're not paying their RG&E, and you know, gas and electric, I feel it's kind of on them. But clearly don't have the city shut off the water at the street or anything. That's very not ethical.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, practically.
You know what? And then this just jogged my memory. I remember in the beginning of COVID, RG&E wasn't shutting anyone off. Are they back to shutting people off?
No, as far as I know, no.
Okay.
They shouldn't do it in the winter.
Oh, they do though.
Well, I know we had this happen. I wound up doing it at the house when we had the city trying to remove the people from that house. If you have no heat, technically you should be able to shut the water off in the middle of the winter because the pipes are going to freeze.
Well, yeah, if it gets to that, of course. I mean, that's just using common sense. You're not doing it in a devious, retaliatory kind of way. Right? You're just protecting your property. That's lawful. So Brad, what's been your experience with tenant rents and, you know, the COVID saga?
You know, any issues with non-payment of rent. So it's probably something that I'm more just learning and hearing these stories about, but haven't run into that yet. So yeah, can't really share anything on that, unfortunately, or fortunately maybe.
Okay. And ironically, the you know, this is a time where, unlike before, where DSS rent vouchers, SSI, Section 8, those are rock solid. I mean, these are rents you can count on now, right? Whereas before, a long time ago,
you couldn't. No, correct. And I have a mixture. So I have some Section 8, which you know, like you say, is rock solid. And then it's probably about 50-50 actually. But luckily on both sides, haven't run into the problem just yet. And kind of thinking that, you know, maybe Section 8 over the next, you know, 18 to 24 months is probably the way to go. Until we see how these relief funds come through and money dries up, and then people need to rethink how, you know, the government may be able to support these programs.
Yeah, very good. Like to pull in Colleen on the mix here because, and if you don't know Colleen, she's an awesome real estate agent, really busy, knows her stuff. But the issue of rents not being paid actually transfers over to real estate deals in a number of different ways. One is, and I've been on both sides in the last 5 months, and I know this quite well, but one is, you know, the property's listed, you got a deal, you got a contract, rent was paying on time. During those 3 months, rent stops, right? And then you heading to the closing table, and the buyer, you know, what's going on? I have 4 months of no rent. I want to back out of this deal. I don't want to close this deal because I have a non-paying rent. So you're back to the negotiating table. You're back to this concessions. So you got that thing happening. Then you got the ones where, well, first of all, you got to think about whether or not you want to list the property. So in my portfolios, I'm not listing properties that we have a tenant rent problem. It doesn't look good on a listing. Colleen, chime on in here.
I had an investor contact me yesterday. He has about 30 units. His 2 buildings that are 8 units each, more than half of them aren't paying rent. So he contacted me because he wants to sell, I think, 2 or 3 of his 2 families and a couple single families, so he can continue holding on to the 8 units and hopefully ride out and get rent back from the tenants. But he's selling houses where the tenants are paying because he needs the money to cover the other 2, you know. So and when he contacted me, he was telling me, like, you know, that half his tenants weren't paying, and I thought he was trying to sell the houses where the tenants weren't paying. And I said, you know, unfortunately, you know, nobody wants to take on somebody else's headache, and if somebody does, it's gonna be at a greatly reduced price. So if you have a non-paying tenant, you've got to work out some kind of deal that makes it worthwhile for the buyer to actually close on a tenant who may not pay rent for 6 more months, you know. So it's tricky right now.
I give you an example. A few months ago on a deal, again, especially the deals that were consummated pre-COVID, and then the closings were post-COVID. Those were the tricky ones, right? So we had to, 3 months the tenant wasn't paying. I forgave that rent, so the buyer's coming into the transaction clean. All right, I says, I tell you what, I'll give you the first 2 months of rent to start out with. Take this thing and go. It was a win-win. It was worth it for me. We wanted this thing gone, but we had to think quickly on how to keep that deal together, and that's what kind of did it. Things like that are happening.
Yeah, we have had a few buyers ask for an escrow to be held, and if they don't get rent from their tenants, you know, the first couple of months, then you know, typically it's like 2 or 3 months that's held in escrow, just to give them a safety net, you know. But again, it still has an impact on price, you know, and somebody doesn't want to buy a non-performing property at, you know, market value. They want under market value to cover it. So
exactly right. And Colleen, the market's still strong out there in the type C and D areas.
So the residential market actually slowed down quite a bit during the month of August, and that's kind of typical because everybody's doing their last minute summer vacations before the kids go off to school and that kind of thing. And generally we see it pick up again in September. It was slow to pick up, but we're starting to see it again. And when I say slow, I mean, instead of getting 13 offers on a house, I got 3, you know. So it's still a rockin' market. It's just a little slower and a little less frantic than it was, you know, 5 months ago. The C and D areas, again, it's all, you know, COVID tenants. What do we got going on here? Are they letting us in for inspections? Are they letting us in to see the property, you know, with buyers? We've had to be a little bit creative with some of the tenants. And, you know, have mass showings where we're at the door with hand sanitizer and we're squirting everybody as they walk in, making sure they have a mask and telling them not to touch anything. You know, it's been a creative adventure, but can get it done. And the C and D areas, you know, we've also been having a lot of issues with the unrest in the city, and that has had an impact on some of our sales. I just sold one on Pennsylvania Avenue that's going to close in a couple of weeks, and it was right around the corner.
No, it ain't.
I'm doing a final walkthrough. I got it scheduled, and it's an owner-occupied house too, which is really sad. So yeah, it's rough. It's rough.
Do you think that C and D areas, you know, rental properties, you know, what effect has COVID-19 had on the buyer and seller side of the transaction, if you see any?
You know, I can't really say that I've seen a huge impact that COVID has played, at least with the buyers. The buyers that are out there are buyers that have money in their pocket and they want to spend it. You know, we've got some pretty good cash floating around right now, believe it or not. And as far as the sellers go, it depends on their situation and why they're selling. You know, if it is poor management or COVID affected rents not being received and they just don't know how to recoup it because they're trying to manage on their own or haven't contacted somebody, it makes a difference. But the buyers that are out there, they're, with the investor arena, people want to buy all the time. And right now, a lot of buyers are out there thinking that they can maybe snatch up some good deals because the sellers are so aggravated with the COVID situation that, they're ready to cut bait. So
I think, just to interject, right before I got on the call, I noticed that I can't remember exactly where it came, but it was a news piece that said the last time that housing sales was this high was in 2006.
mhm.
So, all things considered, I mean, we're in a situation where the houses, you just can't keep them. I mean, as
Exactly.
soon as you put them out there, they're gone. So just a broad markets type standpoint, not necessarily just properties where you're gonna have an investor buying it, but it's still rocking.
Absolutely. I just listed a house just before I got on the call here. I listed it at 5 minutes to 7. And while I've been sitting here, I've got 3 showings lined up for tomorrow.
I don't know how you do what you do, man. Crack me up.
Colleen, let me ask you this. I have, we've taken over quite a few properties lately where we're inheriting a mess. And I don't understand how the buyer cannot know that these people aren't paying and all that stuff. Like, how does that even happen?
It shouldn't happen. The realtor should be confirming that rents are all, where they're supposed to be at closing. The attorney should be confirming it because they're crediting for rent received and stuff. But unfortunately, there are some sellers out there that are not above board and they will say, yeah, the tenant's paid right along and then just not worry about it and even take money out of their pocket to pretend that that tenant paid rent for that month to be prorated. But honestly, you really, if the agent or the buyer is doing their due diligence, they should be, with the 24-hour final walkthrough we do before closing, they should be asking the tenant straight out, are you current on your rent? They should be asking the property manager the same thing, just to make sure that everybody tells the same story and that nobody's trying to sneak one by, But I can tell you there's a lot of sellers out there that'll lie through their teeth and say, had no problem at all, they're fine. And then tell the tenants, hush, you won't have to pay me anymore. You won't have to pay me the back rent if you just, say you're paying the rent all along. And they do it. It's sad, but it's true.
Because I've always wondered, I'm like, how do you not know this stuff, and then
they should know it. They really should. I mean, obviously, but there's a lot of buyers that don't even bother with final walkthroughs or agents that don't bother with final walkthroughs. And it's problematic because, anything can happen.
So more specifically, Colleen, and then we'll move on. How often do you run into a seller going, COVID-19? My tenants have not paid me for the last 4 or 5 months. I want out, sell it. How often does that happen?
Honestly, not as often as you think it would. There's a lot of sellers out there right now that are just trying to, maneuver their way through this and figure out how to hold on. That guy that contacted me yesterday, he really was the first one who said he was ready to dump a lot of his property because of COVID. I haven't had many calls at all from sellers saying that. Obviously, they've been frustrated, or owners, I should say. Obviously, they've been frustrated with the whole process, but I think it's also difficult for them to just let it go.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
Because they see hope on the horizon, maybe, right?
If they got mortgages on those properties, they're walking. I see a lot of board ups going on up there. They're underwater backwards. And so,
well, there is some forbearance that's helped them a little bit, but as that goes by the wayside, which it really is, if you can't keep your records and show that you're affected by COVID, then you have to start making your mortgage payments. So we will see more of that, I imagine. But right now, haven't seen as much of it as you would think.
Thanks, Colleen. Awesome stuff.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, you still got your thing tomorrow morning?
I do. Yep. 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Housing Council. Questions and answers.
You wanna-
Anything you wanted to know.
Are we welcome to that, or is that a select group?
Absolutely.
Why
Yep.
don't you announce it?
I will get the link and post it on the chat. Sound good?
Gotcha. Cool.
Okay. Perfect.
Beth, do you think it's worth a few minutes to talk about the Section 8 stuff, or is that have we burnt that out? The incentive thing?
I personally think it's worth it. So I'll just do it quickly. Section 8 has some incentive programs right now. So if you rent to a Section 8 person and you're not a Section 8 landlord, they'll give you $1,000 signing bonus. If you are a current Section 8 landlord and you rent to a new Section 8 tenant, you can get a $500 bonus. Now, they kind of consider that a house cannot have had a Section 8 tenant in it for 24 months. So 2 years, nobody could have lived there that's Section 8. So that's good. They also have a renovation grant. I don't know if grant's the right word, but that they will so you have your first Section 8 inspection. Sometimes Section 8 will come up with a list of things that you need to do, paint X, Y, and Z, fix the driveway. You can get up to $1,000 reimbursed once you provide receipts. So that's a good one. We're a Section 8 landlord. So we just did this for one of our owners. So he got the $500 signing bonus for placing a Section 8 tenant there. And then he also got $1,000 reimbursed. So on top of, his bill, let's say, to make it ready was $1,200. He basically just got all of that plus $300 reimbursed. They have a couple other ones too. It's like if you need to have a lead test, they'll reimburse you up to $1,000 for paint work for that lead test. And then they also have a new one where it's kind of like DSS, the landlord tenant agreement. There's not actually money exchange for the security deposit. It's more like a voucher. If the tenants break anything, they'll reimburse you up to 1 month's rent. There's pros and cons with that. But definitely the first two is something that I think is very good, especially if you're familiar with the Section 8 process. And the paperwork's super easy.
I was going to ask you about that. Back in the day, it took months, right, to get through that process. So once they got the moving papers, you have them filled out. And I understand that you can actually bring them in, or the tenant walk them down there.
No, you can email them in now too.
Oh, cool. So from that point of submission to inspection and approval, what's the timeline?
We're finding that if a tenant turns in their moving papers, which we don't let them turn it in, we actually send it from our office so we know it actually got there. And then typically 3 days until I have an inspection, which is a couple days out. And then, it really depends on how much your house is ready. So, I can have, for moving papers and everything goes perfect, probably I can have the tenant moved in 2 weeks. So they're much quicker than they used to be, much quicker.
The old timers out there, Leon, Stuart, Carl, Joe, Sue, that timeline was 2 months long.
Yeah.
Not too much, 2 months.
Yeah, there are a lot of variables, if it's September 2nd and the Section 8 paid their rent for September, clearly they're not going to pay it again mid-month, but
right,
a lot of variables.
Yeah, the biggest length was submission to scheduling the inspection. That thing was 3 to 4 weeks right there.
Oh no, not at all.
No, now it's not. And Section 8, they got smart. They redevised their model, their system, because of that very reason. Most of us returned. I never did Section 8 because of that reason. One of the reasons, and because of that, they had a problem getting places rented and done. Blah, blah, blah. So they got that junk out of there just to get more owners involved and opening up the units for this 13,000 person waiting list.
The other perk of Section 8, which we really like, is if you have a Section 8 inspection and your C of O is up within the following year, you can actually get the interior inspection waived for the C of O because they take the Section 8 pass report for that. So we really like that, you know, because then you don't have to do a lead test or anything like that.
Yep, and I found, and correct me if I'm wrong, Beth, is that in initial Section 8, as long as there's not lead paint violations, they find violations. The reinspection is clear. They take the reinspection as a pass for that C of O.
As long as there's not paint issues, correct?
All right, let's move on. We'll wind this down here. We're out of here by 8:30. This is a time where anybody has a topic or an issue want to throw out there so we could bat it around and see who's got some solutions or ideas to an issue you ran across, not quite sure how to deal with it. Go ahead.
No questions, but just a thank you to Beth. I think that information on Section 8 was very helpful, so thanks for that.
You're welcome.
And Beth, is this information online?
I
believe it's on their website. I'm pretty sure it is.
Yeah, Section 8, when we did that, we did a Zoom call a couple of weeks ago with Section 8, and there is a whole section. If you want to email me at rochesterhouses@gmail.com, I can send you the website addresses that they gave me to go to.
Yeah, and their resource list is pretty cool. So all their forms are on there. You can pull them off and print them out. So
it's actually a very good site to go to, even if you're just kind of looking around for certain forms or ideas on, you know, best practices. There's actually some good stuff on there.
And maybe next month we'll talk about this, but soon down the road, the city is finally coming around and they're developing and you may know this, with a third party vendor, exactly what Section 8's doing, they're going to be doing for the city. And what that is where you have, let's take code enforcement, right? Whereby online, we're going to get to see the notice and orders. We're going to get to see the C of Os. We're going to get to see all the stuff that goes on. You can do this with Section 8. You can see the reports right on there in the portals, right, Beth? And so that's what they're working towards. I heard somewhere in early 2021, they're going to launch this. Actually, this thing is launched. I think we might cover it next month. It's very premature right now. But it's going to be so cool because all those phone calls and emails, I need a copy of the notice and order and the C of O, and
I swear they're gonna eliminate 10 positions just by doing it.
Yeah. So that's gonna be so awesome, so automated that wow. Anyway, that's coming down the pike.
Does anyone have any of those have a form letter that I can give to one of my clients who's making a deal with his tenant to move and he's giving her cash? I know, Beth, you talked about I told them about getting the ID and taking a picture when they sign it, when she hands over the keys and the apartment. Do you have a particular letter that you have drawn up that I could give to somebody or know where I could find one? Okay.
So wait. So between Beth and I, we got them really cool. It will make it lawfully tolerant, right? It's the verbiage makes it lawful, we think, right? So
that's what we're hoping for.
The main thing is you just have to make sure the person, I'm not coerced into signing this. We all have hard times. This is a hard time. We both need to move forward, that type of thing.
I'm gonna send
the house has been sold and the woman was $4,000 behind in rent, and the house is being sold to an owner occupant. So the owner made a deal with her that, look, you move out, middle of October, I'll give you X amount of dollars and forget the rent you owe me. And she agreed. So I just told him that he shouldn't do it without a letter being signed and, like every proof that it was her that signed it and there was no, breaking arms or anything.
I mean, I wouldn't have her sign it until she's out.
Yeah, that's what he's going to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Aren't you Rochester Properties?
Rochester Houses.
Houses.
At Gmail.
I'm gonna send that in a minute.
Thank you, hon.
Any other topics anybody want to bring up? The code enforcement permit office is now open for walk-in service. If you done a few in the past, you know you had to drop it off in the drop box and hope things went through. Inspections are back up and running in a COVID kind of a way. Lead tests are being done by the city again. We're moving forward, getting these C of Os done.
You done any C of O waivers, Carl?
Yeah, I did one. I think you did one, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
They work out well.
Yeah. Well, what that is, if you applied for a C of O after COVID began, what, March 1 or something like that, or if it's due, something. I don't know the thing, Beth, but it's up to the inspector. As long as there's no lead paint violations, they actually give you a interior inspection waiver that you and the tenant sign off on together, certifying 4 things. One is no infestations, no lead paint hazards, no any other hazards, and your carbs and smokes are on. So you and your tenant go through the property, you agree on it, you pay him a couple, no, I didn't say that. And you sign, and then you turn it in. Now I don't know what they do with those. I haven't heard a response, Beth. What happens after that?
I mean, from what I understand, they just take them and they waive the interior. Other than that, I haven't heard anything different.
They still do the outside though.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wonder if they have any outside lead paint violations that may cause the waivers to be no good and doing inside.
I believe it's paint in general.
Okay.
I think if you have exterior peeling paint, they're not going to take it.
Okay. Any other, we're winding down here, guys. We're getting all zoomed out here, man. So October 4th, yeah, watch October 4th. That's the day that things end and things start regarding moratoriums, extensions, warrants. But then again, you know, one order says you can have them, one order says you can't. So overlapping, we're I don't say screwed, but we're in a tough spot for a while. Let's put it that way. Let's close this out. Anybody else got something else going on? Leon, we're all good.
Yep, everything is, I think we covered most of the bases. I don't have any other item at this point.
I look forward to tomorrow's Colleen's show. That's 9 o'clock, right?
Yep, 9 a.m.
And the Housing Council. Do you know who it is?
Yes. Hold on a second.
The boss?
Tell me the boss's name.
It used to be the boss.
A
Susan
woman.
Boss. Yeah, Susan Boss used to be the head. She's not.
I
forgot who it is now.
Lou, yeah, hold on, I'll tell you.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, I can't tell you right now. My email's not coming up. There's two women that are going to be on the call with us.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't remember their names.
Awesome. I'll be there bright and early. Bring
All
the
right,
coffee.
so will I. Yes, coffee and bagels, just for you.
Beth, you all good? Anything else, Beth? Closing arguments?
I'm good. I'm good.
Go feed your dog.
I know.
All right, so
Are you talking about Pat?
I knew that was coming.
Yeah, the beast. All right, guys, I gotta go, and we'll see y'all later.
Hey, Carl, one thing.
Yeah.
Did you have a boy or a girl grandchild, and how is she or he?
It's a she. Evie is her name, Evelyn, and she's cute.
Evelyn.
And I'll get involved when she starts talking.
Congrats.
Congrats, Carl.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks a lot. My first one. Yeah.
That's
Congrats,
awesome.
Carl.
All right, guys. I'll see y'all later.
Have a good
Okay.
night.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Everybody have a good evening.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thanks very much, everyone. Appreciate all the insight.
Good night.
Good night.
Night, everybody.
Yeah, little girl. This one. Evie.